All right. Good evening, all. We're lucky enough tonight to have a great moderator and panelists. This is a first time. We're very excited. Myself, Carly Baker, and Dr. Swanton for our online sports analytics conference. Just a couple of housekeeping notes, folks. Make sure you leave your audio on mute, and then first half hour. Mr. Doug Holzman will be moderating, and then we'll open up the last half hour. If you have questions, you can either put in the chat or just unmute, and then we'll go in order. We'll end it at the 7:30 hour. With that being said, again, I want to thank Dr. Swanton and Carly Baker for all their hard work and for all they do for the program. And with that, I would like to pass it on to Doug.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you all for coming. Like, I'm excited. I was telling my wife last night, and I said it's funny. I said I always say this. I never want to be the smartest person in a room because if I am, we're all in trouble. So tonight, I don't have to worry about that one bit. So we've got some very smart people here, very successful people there. So I think we're gonna have a good time. But since we've got a half an hour of doing this, let's go kind of quickly through the first question. I want to go through each and everybody's kind of career path right now. And JP, why don't we start with you?
Awesome. Thanks, Doug and Anthony and Deb. Thank you for having me on. Excited to be here. So my name is JP Buckley. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Business Development at Helios Sports. Helios is a AI wearable platform that provides skating analytics, load management solutions, training optimization platform for hockey players, youth, all the way up to Division One in college. I got my start in sports really by first being a lifelong athlete. And then as I got into college, I went to Boston University and I got involved working with the hockey team there as a video coordinator. And that was an incredible experience that allowed me to continue down that path. I joined the Nashville Predators. I spent a couple seasons in Nashville doing player development and scouting with the focus on technology and analytics. Um, that then led me to taking a head video coach job for the Boston Bruins. And I spent most of my career in Boston leading our team technology, doing video operations. And I did that for a long time up until a tragic loss in 2019 Stanley Cup Finals that I'm still getting over. But I ended up deciding to leave the team side of sports and get more into the business side. And so I worked for a variety of different startups that were building advanced AI solutions, whether that's a computer vision based product or predictive analytics for fan engagement. And I did that for a few years before I landed at Helios.
Great. And Tyler, you next.
How's it going? Well, first of all, thanks for having me. So right now I'm on the business intelligence and strategy team at Comcast Spectacor, which is the parent company for the Philadelphia Flyers. Over time, my role has shifted to be a lot more strategy focused than pure analytics. A big part of what I do is ticket optimization. So, we're making sure we're putting the right price on the right seat at the right time and really understanding the value of every seat in our arena. I'm also involved in revenue optimization, forecasting, building out different ticket offers, packages, and pricing strategies. And as for the sport, I kind of grew up around the sport. So I saw the game from the inside at a young age. My dad worked on the team side. So as I got older, though, I became more fascinated with the business side and kind of like the part that no one really sees, the behind the scenes. And the world of pricing, strategy, and data really pulled me in. And I was always wired toward numbers and problem solving. So analytics being the perfect lane. And, now I get to blend it with the business side of hockey. And it's just a really overall an ideal fit.
Very nice. And
Um,
Taylor, how about you
go ahead.
next?
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Taylor Jones, the Director of Business Analytics for the Arizona Diamondbacks. So, switching it up in baseball over here. I've been with the team for 7 seasons now. Started out as an intern while I was in grad school at Arizona State. I also considered going to BU, ended up at Arizona. So, JP, we almost went to the same school. But I ended up coming down here where there's sunshine instead of snow and got my master's in business analytics while interning with the Diamondbacks on this team, and got my first full-time job with the Arizona Cardinals. So I have a little bit of experience with the NFL. I was only over there for a few months before an entry-level role opened up here with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And baseball is the sport I grew up with. It's where my heart is. Grew up a really big Red Sox fan, so I still cheer for them unless they're playing the D-backs. But the Diamondbacks are definitely my National League team. And I've been here for the past 7 years. I've had growth over the 7 years, and now oversee the team. I've been in my current role leading the team for about 3.5 years, and we oversee, similar to what Tyler just said, analytics and reporting strategy for all business operations departments across the organization. So that includes marketing, ticket sales, corporate partnerships. Those are probably our big three, but we're starting to dip our toes into things like social media, ballpark operations, our community foundation, specifically more on like the 50-50 raffle side of things. But any sort of data and analytics needs that are needed from the business operations standpoint goes through me and my team. So happy to be here.
Thank you. And Anthony, how about you?
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for having me, and pleasure to be here with all these wonderful panelists as well. So excited for this conversation we're going to have tonight. But give you a little bit of background on my experience. I'm currently the head of brands and agencies at Vision Insights, which is an agency that supports really all stakeholders across sport and entertainment. So rights holders, brands, networks, you name it. But started my career at Verizon Wireless on the partnership side. So got some good experience working on the brand side there, just understanding how they would like to measure success, and then moved over to a startup at the time called Replicom, which some of you may be familiar with. It was a sports marketing startup based out of Australia that was moving into the US. This was back in like 2013. So it was really there from the beginning of that business moving to the US and building it up here in the States and across North America. Was there for around 3 years before it was acquired by Nielsen when they turned that into Nielsen Sports. So then spent a large part of my career there at Nielsen, around 13 years in total across various different teams, some on the account side, managing particular brand clients and, agency and team clients, as well as some leagues, but also spent a bunch of time leading the research business there. So really developing the solutions for brands and right holders to understand the value that they're both delivering and receiving from sponsorship, and what are the valuation models that can continually actively measure the value that they're able to drive from sponsorship and help them make better decisions, and also like report back to their partners with proof of performance. Around that time too, I ended up starting a nonprofit called Why We Love Sport, which helps to highlight all the wholesome moments in sports. So similar to JP, came from an athlete background myself, and one of the things that was always super important to me was like all the values that are around sport, whether it's mentorship, being a teammate, leadership, being a member of a team, and knowing how to play a role and what all those things mean. So really thankful that I was able to build a platform for people to get involved and kind of get in touch with maybe the basis of their interest in sport. But that's been going really well. We have like around 500,000 followers on social media, so it's been really cool to be a part of that. And then just around 6 months ago, I joined Vision Insights to head up the brands and agencies business. So really a business development and client development role, kind of similar to what I was doing towards the end of my career there at Nielsen, really developing solutions for the sport and entertainment industry for everybody to better value the impact that they're able to make as a result of sponsorship.
Very cool. And for me, just so I was born into a big baseball family. I was kind of bred to be a baseball player. My dad played with the Cardinals. My uncle played 15 years in Major League. There's 5 World Series rings. So like I was literally bred to be a pitcher, and went to college very cocky. Could have got basically went in very cocky, but threw in the 90s and then hurt myself. And it went from about 94 to 82 overnight. And I'm a little older than most of the people here. So Tommy John surgery back then was like 2.5 years. So I said, that's all for that. That's all. I started with sports agents. My cousin started with the group called Sports Management Group, which turned into SFX, which then turned into CAA. So the big sports agents now. So I worked for them for a little bit, thought that's what I was going to be, Jerry Maguire, until I didn't. I saw some sides of that sports I did not like on that side. I pivoted to the team side. So I was 15, 20 years on the team side of the business selling sponsorships. That was my main focus. So I worked in the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, in college. And I wanted to do that, but then I got married and had a family and had girls and then realized, oh crap, I don't know if I want to do, you know, as I know Taylor right here, 81 home games on that one and go on the road with the team a lot. So I went to the agency side of the business. I ran one of the top 10 advertising agencies in America. I ran their sports division. So what cool, my cool fact means nothing, right? But I'm one of the only people that you'll ever meet that have sold $100 million in sponsorships, but then I bought $100 million in sponsorships. So it's kind of cool. I've seen both sides of it. I'm not a tech guy, and then I got recruited to go run a tech company. How about that? That does not happen a lot. So I've been at Sports Digita for now going on 8 years. What we are is think of us as like a PowerPoint, but on steroids. That's the easiest way to say it. Over 600 teams use us. So I run kind of our sports division on this. Teams use us on the business side when they're selling sponsorships and tickets, but also on the sports side when they're recruiting or free agency, and then also for draft. So again, I've been all parts of this. With tech, again, over the last 8 years, I've learned enough to be dangerous. And that's what I say. But I'm definitely not a tech guy. So love being on here tonight. We're going to hear a lot of fun stuff. So let's get right to some of the questions. I know a lot of people want to know is what advice would you all give to everyone on here that wants to work in the sports industry in the future? And again, let's always just go JP, Tyler, Taylor, and then Anthony.
Yeah, it's a great question. My experience has been the people that have found their way into sports either played and continued on in that fashion, or while they were at college, they got involved working with their team, was like some team within the college. So that was my path. I got exposure to the world of sports. I got injected into the network and met a lot of people while I was working for the team, for the hockey team there. And that was what allowed the doors to open. I found sports can be very relationship based. And so it all depends on who you know and who knows you. And when those jobs come up, not all the time are they going to be advertised and open job applications, maybe on the business side, maybe some for some other startups. But if you're wanting to go down the path of like team side sports, it really depends on who do you know and who knows you, and are you looking for a job, and then they recommend your name to someone behind closed doors. And so a lot of it is really start building your network now. Start doing things like this, which is awesome. Don't be afraid to reach out to people on LinkedIn, introduce yourself, get coffee, ask people how you can, you know, the same question that's being asked now. How can I position myself to be ready for a role at your company or at your team at some point in the future? So that would be my biggest recommendation, is to try to get involved in sports. And what I want to talk to a lot of kids, I want to work in sports because I like them, and they just almost expect to get a job. But as I was told when I was doing my contract negotiations one year, there's about 1 million kids who would take my job for half the price just to get in and work at an organization. So you really have to differentiate yourself, really build that network, and then be willing to take any job. I found when you get into sports, like you're not just going to go be the GM one day. You're not going to be an assistant GM. A lot of the people that have those roles I've seen started out working in as an intern doing communications or public relations, and they just worked hard and they developed a reputation and they learned different parts of the business. And then as opportunities came up, they jumped there, just like Tyler. He started on one spot and then he pivoted over to another one. And so be willing to do anything, get your foot in the door, and really work on those network and relationship building skills.
Great advice. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I actually agree a lot with what was said there because I too worked with the hockey team at Endicott, and then in the summertime I would intern at Catapult Sports, which is like an analytical wearable device in sports. So it kind of gave me two different lenses. One was strictly on like a team side, and then another thing was you know a business. So I definitely agree. I think just maintain relationships with people, stay in touch. one thing that I found is easy for me is like college football teams. Like if you remember someone's a fan of a team, follow up that Monday here and there just to stay in touch. That way, you're not only reaching out when you need something, you're kind of just staying. I always say stay in the pocket. And yeah, I also agree that if you're trying to break into sports, be open to different lanes. I actually started here as an intern. I was supposed to be a sales intern in the business strategy and analytics team here. Needed an intern, and so I actually applied to that as well while already being a sales intern, and then ended up being brought on board here. And then that turned into a full-time job. I know it doesn't always happen that way, but I would definitely say stay open to different lanes. Most people in this industry don't take a straight path. So if you learn fast, stay curious, and say yes to any opportunity, you'll put yourself in a really great position.
Love it. How about you, Taylor?
Yeah, I hate to sound like a broken record, but networking is, I think, the big thing, and I'm sure most of you as students have heard this, but it is so important to get into sports because of how competitive these roles are, whether you're trying to get in on the team side or the business side. And I would encourage all of you to consider the business side because I do think there's more opportunities sometimes on the business side than there are on the player side. Not always, but sometimes. But I don't think it's considered everyone. Like when you think sports and I want to work in sports, I think everyone automatically kind of goes to player side analytics. But there is this entire world of business analytics where we still do get to make impactful decisions and be a part of sports. So networking is huge. That's how I got my role. I started to just tell people like, oh, there's this world of sports analytics. I'm interested in learning more. And it turns out a family friend was working for the Rangers. And so I had a conversation with him and then met his entire team. And then they connected me with the D-backs as soon as I moved down here. And JP or Tyler mentioned like just continuously follow up and go grab coffee. And I happened to do that right before, an internship became available. And that's ultimately how I got my foot in the door. So networking definitely is huge. And I always tell students focus on building a relationship. When I'm talking to students, I'm more than happy to talk for 30 minutes to an hour and tell you things about my role and how I got here and what we do on a daily basis and answer questions you have. But when I get on phone calls that the first question is, do you have any jobs available? It's a little bit of a turnoff. Like try and build relationships with people first, and then the jobs and us speaking on your behalf and sending you openings or referring you will come if you focus on building the relationship first. And then just second, to add a little bit something different than just networking. I think when I'm looking at internship applications or entry level role apps, you do have to kind of have that competitive advantage because we are getting hundreds of people that are applying for these roles, say within a week of the job being open. And something I'm always looking for is a unique project that you've done. So go and find data. Just sports data is so readily available on the internet. So you can go to ESPN and export tons of data and do a side project where you're analyzing that. Put that on your resume. Something as small as that can really like set you apart from your competitors. So having sports related projects on your resume is huge, especially if you're looking for analytics types roles.
That was fantastic for sure. And Anthony,
Yeah, absolutely. Great answers, everybody, by the way. This is an awesome discussion. I mean, like for myself, I was connected to sports my whole life, right? Like being an athlete, like JP mentioned, and Doug as well. And, generally committing to soccer as like a main sport in high school and, heading into college, joining the Red Bull Football Academy. But funnily enough, after a couple bad injuries, kind of similar to Doug's story, and like walking away from competitive sport as an athlete, I basically intentionally didn't pursue a career in sports because I thought it was just going to be potentially more difficult to break into than some other careers at that time. And ended up studying like statistics and economics as a result with like a plan to work for the government. Obviously, that didn't go that direction. But that being said, towards the end of college, when I was applying for different jobs, there was definitely one that stood out, which was that a sports marketing startup I had mentioned earlier called Repicom. So even throughout that process and applying for hundreds of jobs at that point, because you want to give yourself, it's a numbers game, so you want to give yourself the best chance you possibly can. So while like the monetary compensation wasn't necessarily as attractive as some other options, there was something about staying close to sports that felt right, and I believed in myself and the company enough to take that chance and try it out. So while it may have seemed risky at the time, and ended up being one of the best decisions I ever made, partially because Repicom is also where I met Scott, the CEO of Vision Insights, who was planning to join us tonight, but selfishly is joining his son's basketball game right now because he's a great dad. But I guess really just like two morals to that story. Like one, being willing to pivot from what you might think is like your main plan or path, and not being afraid to bet on yourself through the process, which can include like working for a company that's not a household name right now, but could turn into one. So like to the point earlier, just finding a way to break into sport in general, if that's where your passion lies, I think should be a good mindset to set you up for success. And two, while it might seem obvious, and these guys talked about it a little bit too, like truly leaning into and nurturing those relationships that you're given the opportunity to cultivate with people around, whichever organization you join or even prior to, is super, super important. So like it's a running joke here in the sports and entertainment industry that it's kind of very incestuous, meaning people move around a lot and often end up reconnected with people that they were close to at some point in the past as well, or that they may have worked with in the past. So in that sense, again, these guys have mentioned it, but your network is truly your net worth, where the more you can lean into that and cultivate those relationships, you never know if it's going to serve you like now or later or any point in between, but they tend to come back around because it's a pretty tight knit community once you're kind of engulfed in it.
I love it. And in interest of time, I could go on and on about this. By the way, so I'm just going to tell you one thing. So my mentor was Steve Shanwald, who ran the Chicago Bulls for 30 years. And he said one thing to me, I'm going to cuss. I pre-apologize, everybody, right? We're going to put on earmuffs, right? He said to me this, he goes, Doug, don't be an asshole. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, nobody wants to work with assholes. I want you to think about that today, right? That's the best advice ever given to me. And think about it, nobody wants to hire an asshole. So that's my advice for y'all. Let's skip to some industry trends. So, what are the most exciting trends in the sports analytics right now, and how are teams leveraging these trends to gain a competitive edge? Tyler or JP? Sorry.
You're confusing me now.
Yeah, I
Going out
know.
of
Yeah,
order here. Yeah, this is a topic that I could talk about forever because in addition to just like the sports analytics trends, there's broader trends happening within the sports industry in general that are very exciting. Like before, if you wanted to work in sports, you pretty much had to try and get your way into the team. But now, because of technology, because of capital interest coming from private equity, and now seeing sports ownership as an opportunity, the advances in technology, whether it's computer vision based technology, AI based technology, and more of like the LLM structure, or just sports gambling, more of a regulation trend. There is an incredible opportunity for you to stay involved in sports on a career path that's outside of just working for a team. And so, like, I work for a wearables company. Our customers are the team customers. And so I went from being on the team side to more on the business startup side. And it's incredibly exciting. I have a ton of friends who also made that pivot. And now they're working at DraftKings. They're working for other startups. They're on fan engagement software companies. And it's just an incredible opportunity. And so the trends that I specifically am interested in, obviously we hear AI as a big buzzword. And I'd like to challenge you guys not to just get wrapped up in this AI as a buzzword, but really what does that actually mean? Because within the AI umbrella, there are an unbelievable amount of subsectors to that. Are we talking about computer vision AI? And so you're getting to work at a company that's using computer vision to break down game film, or using computer vision to break down fan engagement within a game and see where people are looking and where advertisement dollars might want to get placed. Or on my side, I'll keep it to what I'm working on now, which is performance analytics. And so the company that I work for is tracking very advanced skating analytics, load analytics that help coaches and strength coaches or performance coaches or the general manager understand like how hard are our players working, how much strain can we put on the body to optimize them for performance at the professional level. If LeBron James is out of game, ticket sales go down. And so we want to incentivize LeBron James to play in as many games as he possibly can. And so we talk about load management a lot. And now, because of advancements in technology in the wearable sector and in computer vision sector, and the cost of sensors coming down, and with other AI-based solutions that allow the average person to be able to analyze large amounts of data by just typing in questions into a AI coach platform instead of actually being like a statistical, genius. You can start to bring some of those technologies that used to be siloed in the professional organization where you needed to have a PhD in kinesiology and sports science to understand. We're making that accessible down in the youth market. And so professionalization of youth training is a whole other topic for a different day, but it's a very exciting time, both in terms of like individual athlete development. Kids are way better than I was when I was growing up. And you can see it as how the game has developed, both like there's 18-year-olders leading the league in the NHL, there's kids that are playing, and it's because they've been professionally trained all the way since they were young. And we can debate on if that's healthy or not, but that's where they're going. And so if you are taking this path, there's so many new technologies out there that are helping players stay healthy, helping develop athletes in a much more intentional, data driven way. And it's just a really exciting time. Youth sports in general, I would encourage you guys all to look at that. It is a wild west when it comes to um, like what's happening there. It's so fragmented. It hasn't been a space that a lot of companies wanted to touch. And now there's a significant amount of money coming in from investors and people that are in this space that are very interested in building products on the youth side, and trying to just figure out what's going on down there. And to Taylor's point, I'll leave you with this. Her recommendation on doing a side project is the best advice that's been given so far. Because
100%.
with all these tools, with artificial intelligence, with a simple chat GPT, don't use it to just write your emails and never think again. That's going to put you in a bad spot. Use it to actually think about things and be able to produce stuff that would have been typically outside of your skill set. Now you can have GPT analyze a data set in a very robust way when you might not have had a clue what to do in Excel to do a statistical analysis. And so now you can actually create stuff. You can build apps using some of these softwares that are available without knowing how to code anything. And so you can actually build stuff and present stuff. And even if it's not the best thing in the world, it's not going to make you $1 million. You're not going to start your own company. If you can go to someone like Taylor or Tyler or Anthony in a job interview and say, "Hey, I took a crack at this. This is where I like to, spend my time." That's going to instantly raise you to the top of that resume deck. So that's all I got.
JP, when I went to the baseball winter meetings last year, I met with 20 of the 30 Major League Baseball GMs. Every single one of them, every single one of them said they have so much data and they don't know what to do with all of it and they need help. So if that doesn't say anything, again, let's go back to what Taylor said on this one. It was the best advice, hands down today, but they don't know what to do with it all. Tyler, let's skip on to you.
Yeah, I just want to echo back to what Taylor and both JP said. Before I got started at Endicott, I met with the Flyers director of analytics, and that was the advice he gave me, was have small projects on your own. And I agree with JP. Even today, you could have no idea how to, you don't really need to know how to, query or write code or whatever. You can kind of use AI to do that. So yeah, I fully agree with that. But back to the original question, every industry is really dealing with the boom, the AI boom. But in sports, we're still trying to figure out like what's real innovation on the business side versus what's like a shiny buzzword. Like is it uh, can it be used in a project that helps drive revenue, or is it, a chatbot agent? Um, the exciting stuff where AI is headed, like predictive models that retrain themselves, automated pricing engines, tools that react to market behavior in real time. Those are all very exciting, and some of that comes with like a little bit of a tricky side. Sports pricing still has emotion in it, so a model can't feel the fan base's energy after a controversial hit or understand how a storyline could affect demand. I'm not sure how many are familiar, but we had a player, um, or the Anaheim Ducks had a player that had a history with the Flyers, and demand for that game skyrocketed when typically, Pacific division opponent isn't the most attractive game. That turned into, a heavy hitter for us last year. So Another trend I love is like natural language querying, like being able to like in the car talk to you know, an app or whatever and have all these reports ready on your desk, on your desktop, ready to go before you start your day. That's something that's really exciting. Just being able to literally talk and get a report on your desk. And overall, I would just say the market's wildly competitive. Everyone wants to be the most efficient market possible. So the teams that blend, I would say, human intuition with AI-driven insights are the ones that'll definitely separate themselves.
Taylor, how about you?
Yeah, definitely same in the AI space. That's the trend we're seeing across all teams, all leagues. I think our focus here is how we can use AI to work more efficient. So we've been using an AI emailing tool that can email on behalf of our sales reps, which is pretty common now. Most, if not all, teams are doing this. So that our sales reps can focus on those really warm leads and actually get the sell across the finish line. So just how can we utilize AI to really be more efficient and spend less time doing some of these mundane tasks and more time thinking critically and strategizing and really moving the business forward. We've also just recently developed in-house an AI survey tool that can take all of our open-ended responses and read through those open-endeds, in a second, whereas we had a handful of employees across the organization historically that were spending 15 to 30 minutes a day or a few hours a week reading through these open-ended responses so that we could understand what our fans are saying and identifying why our survey responses were one way versus another, and really getting that detail from our fans. And now we have this AI tool that can read through all of these and summarize it very quickly, so that now these stakeholders just go in to our tool, they read the summary, they can read a handful of the responses if they need to, and then they're done. And so we're saving them, potentially an hour or two a week to now go focus on using those responses and making business decisions to better our in-game experience, or our concessions experience, or whatever it might be. And so I think AI right now, at least from our perspective, is how can we use it to work more efficient. We're looking to put it into our CRM system, which we also have an in-house built one, and looking to build like an AI bot that has access to our CRM and can read like customer profiles and then suggest to the sales reps emails or sales approaches, so they don't have to spend time reading through notes or history of a previous customer to then decide how to sell them. Let's let the AI bot do that and then tell you exactly what to do. So things we're experimenting with is just like, how can we utilize technology to work more efficiently so that we can spend more time being analytical and critical and strategizing.
For sure. And Anthony?
Yeah, really good points by everybody. Obviously, it's a big trend and craze right now around AI. I think every organization is looking to implement it at some level. Like to Tyler's point, it's like, how much of that is concrete versus, maybe sounds nice but isn't able to be truly realized in terms of value. But I'm actually, I think we can all talk about AI for like the entire rest of this discussion. Probably there's enough around the topic, but I'm actually going to take it in a slightly different direction related to trends, just coming from the kind of measurement and valuation space, and working a lot with brands who are spending $100 million plus on various different partnerships across all the major leagues. One of the big trends that I'm seeing there is, and one of the things that is good to do when identifying a trend that's emerging in the marketplace is to like first think about what is something historically that's always been viewed as like the norm or the way that everybody's doing something, and then how might that be changing, or is it going through some kind of evolution? So one that comes to mind, particularly working with like brands, media agencies, and the like, is historically, I think it's good for everybody to know too, kind of how things historically have been sold, which were primarily like an impression-based model. So if you think about just general advertising, a lot of times how things are sold are based on like the number of eyeballs that might be generated wherever that advertising is going to sit, right? So like a basic example, maybe everybody kind of knows it's super expensive to buy like a 30-second spot in a Super Bowl, right? Because it's generating so many eyeballs that could potentially create value for your brand. But I would say like where this evolution is coming from is prioritization moving from like cost per impression, which is basically like how many dollars are you spending to generate those eyeballs, to what we call cost per recall, or like CPR. And the idea there is that you're essentially quantifying the cost for somebody to recall your ad or campaign. So in other words, while impressions can create those like opportunities for brand impact, like quote unquote opportunities for brand impact, it doesn't necessarily quantify what's the likelihood that you were actually able to create an impression and therefore change some kind of decision making, consumer perception, and actions as a result of that advertising. So it's definitely a pretty big revolution that's going on in the brand space, where people are basically just getting more granular and figuring out ways to better quantify who they're actually able to reach as a result of their advertising, and then what kind of impression and impact is had because of that. So if you think about like a kind of ad or recall of a partnership, usually we say that like recall of all the impressions, say there's like 100 million impressions on a particular piece of programming, we usually say that recall is only like 20 to 25% of that. So if you think about like, you're basically, if you were looking at things from an impression perspective, it's like watered down results in a way, because 75% of it is, not necessarily the powder in the drink that's going to stir up and give you something that, you can read. Where like CPR calculates to, from a dollar perspective, maybe 4 or 5 times the CPI because of that 20 to 25% that you're able to reach, but it's generally viewed as a more accurate representation of your advertising success and a better predictor of what's going to drive overall brand impact. So while this hasn't necessarily trickled down to all the teams yet, when I'm working a lot with like individual professional teams, it's something that the brands are doing, and they're putting a lot of accountability on the agencies to start to measure this way, to just push for further justification of their spend via that more accurate measurement of success. So just something to think about, like when you're viewing various different sports, or you're viewing various different programming, whether it's in person, on TV, on streaming, on social media, and so on. Usually a big driver of what that team is able to do from a revenue perspective, it's coming from those partnerships, right? Those sponsorships and those brands spending big money to get visibility. So I think it's helpful to just think about kind of the latest trends around how they're looking to measure impact of their brand.
That's great. And I could tell you from me on an everyday basis, when I talk to our 600 sports teams, every one of the conversations now is AI. Just so you know, everyone. A year ago this time it was not, but now every one of the questions. So when you start thinking about careers in sports, right, and ways to get in and get in early, I want you all to think about one thing, right? So if you were going to compete with me, a sponsorship salesperson, sold $100 million, and you're 24 years old, you going to get the job over me? Probably not, right? Not to be cocky, right? But if you're 22, 23, 24 right now and get involved like in AI and some of these things are at the infancy, you are going to go quickly and move up the ladder. Because who's an expert in AI? It's not 10 years. AI hasn't really been around for 10 years, right? So think about ways that you could get in and penetrate, right? Make an impact and grow quickly. Like if I was 9,000 years ago when I was going out of school, if I would have done it over again, this is what I would be doing right now. And I would be able to rise. And again, one thing I just want you all to think about, right? Be confident and be, like said, do all the right things. Do exactly what Taylor like said. I'm going to be writing, I'm a LinkedIn guy. I'm going to be writing about what you said tomorrow, because that is exactly what someone should be doing. I'm almost pissed that I didn't come up with that. But so what I want to do, I'm going to stop for a second. Let's take a question or two from the audience. Then we'll resume some of our other questions. So anyone have any questions, whether or Anthony that someone sent to you, or anybody here? Feel free.
All right, I'll ask one, and then again, if anyone else has, either put it in the chat box or just unmute and fire away. Question from a student. In terms of, we talked about the job market, but any conferences, Doug, I know I'll defer to you, but the panel as well, that they can be attending. Again, our program, it's real life, it's practical. Where should our graduate students be looking in terms of going in front of those conferences to network with folks in the industry?
Here, I'll start with this. So again, I'm big on this, right? And this is not enough people are doing it. First of all, people stop going to like winter meetings to look for jobs. go to baseball winter meetings. So it's December. I'll be there 5th, 6th, 7th, somewhere around that in Orlando. Just Google it, 5th or 8th, I believe it is on that one. Go and meet, shake people's hands. Like I said, it's a free to go in, by the way, and stay up late at night because at the bar, every one of the teams are there. When I say teams, general managers and all the scouting departments and all the analytical people there, all their BI people, everybody is at the bar at the end of the night. Meet people. Like literally, I can't overemphasize that on that one. But so anytime, like I said, like baseball winter meetings, minor league baseball, they just had theirs in Indiana. I mean, you've got to go to those like industry ones, the ones that paid for ones. I'm actively involved in the National Sports Forum, so that's February in St. Louis. And that's more sponsorship focused, but also it's getting more analytics is being talked about. ALSD is another one on the ticketing side is a good one each year to go to. And feel free to reach out to me and others. Obviously, you guys in Boston have a pretty good one every year for if you want to get involved there. So reach out to people. Don't be afraid to ask. The panelists, any other ones that you could think of off the top of your heads?
Yeah, when I was up at Endicott, I went to Sloan every year, and it was great.
Uh,
Yeah,
if you want to be involved there, you've got to be at Sloan. Like
yeah,
figure out a way how to get there and
yeah.
just show up. Yeah.
That one
That is
sells out
awesome.
Everyone's there.
very quickly. So you want
Everyone's there. Yeah.
yeah, we get a
That one's
But the big thing
also,
is oh, go ahead.
yeah, the Sloan Analytics Conference ticket is probably north of $1,000. So if you can find your way in there through a creative means, then that's also showing some initiative and creativity that might be pretty impressive to somebody.
But I'm not just saying, hey, go have a drink after, but stay up late because it's not always in the conference, it's after the conference on that one. And that's where we talk about relationships. That's where relationships
Yeah.
will really happen. And you've got to
Yeah,
do that and shake hands.
I agree. I think that's where like a lot of my relationships actually started. There would be formal conversations, but they would have their work face on. I would have, trying to impress, whatever, and then you go grab a drink later and really get to know them, and that's kind of what I believe.
Doug, the other thing I'll add when we talked about this in our advisory board
Mhm.
meeting today, and somebody mentioned relationship management. That's important, but also what I tell people when they go to conferences, have a strategy. I went again the baseball winter meetings 1,000 years ago, and specifically, meet with Jeff Eisman from the Las Vegas Stars and New Orleans Zephyrs. So you know exactly where you're going. But these are great points that have relationship management is so important.
And to add to that, Anthony, like it's I'm pulling up like my notes that you can't see that I take when I'm at these at different ones. After you meet someone, right? They're not going to remember you always, right? Because they're meeting a million people. So take a note, like I said, get on your notes, take a note, and say, hey, JP Butley, say where something about him that you'll remember, right? And then easiest way to do it is look them up on LinkedIn, but shoot them a note, but reference the conversation that you had. Hey, JP, great meeting you in Dallas. When we talked about blah, 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 do it that way so they know. Right. And I'm telling you that's easy because JP probably talked to 500 people. Just another way to get that. So just over introduce and then pound it in it with the power of LinkedIn. So if you're not using LinkedIn that way, it's a great way to do it, and you could get in, and then you'll find the relationship. The guy they may give you their number. Great, text back and forth, whatever it is, but get in there. Any other ones, Anthony? Before we go back to some of the questions, or anyone from the group?
I just have a question, if it's okay. So, for the undergrad program in the college-wide, what we do at Endicott, we just started an AI minor. So the School of Sports Science developed a course that addresses both the sport management side and also esports management, and then the human performance side. So it's just interesting to me what JP said about you talked about both related to having a knowledge base. So, do you think that's the way to go? Because we're going to be building, of course, more for our grad program as well, to include, of course, the marketing piece, the fan engagement piece, the qualitative analysis related to the different things that Taylor was talking about for the research base. But should we include a little bit of the human performance side for the sport leadership analytics? Because if you could speak to both and I have an understanding, it might be more marketable in that way.
I think it could be valuable. The sports analytics piece, like if you're someone who wants to, if you have interest in kinesiology, or maybe you did a strength and conditioning track, but now you want to get into the business side, you could definitely be valuable to a company like ours, to a company like Catapult. Um, it depends how deep you probably wanted to get into like the fundamentals of, sports technology from a performance angle, because it could become pretty technical. When you were talking about biometric sensor tracking, when we're talking about joint angles and biometrics and how that can impact performance. And so I think it's, again, if you guys are painting a broad, stroke of like everything to do with it, then the human performance piece has to become involved, because as you'll even see in some of the broadcasts now, the broadcast companies are very interested in tracking how fast players are skating and what the bat speed is and all these different things. And so being aware of that and understanding, like, one, how are they even collecting this data? Two, why is it important to the actual team or general managers or the athletic therapist group? But then also maybe from a sponsorship side or a ticket sales side or a marketing side, like, how can we actually use this data? So I think it'd be smart too.
And
There's
I know
also an
too that
incredible amount of innovation happening in that area, specifically because of advances in computer vision technology, where you can do a lot of very advanced stuff that you wouldn't be able to do 10, 15 years ago. And it's only going to keep both getting better and moving down market into the youth space, into the average player parent, which then gets into AI coaching and other types of platforms.
Great. Thank
and
you so
J
much.
and JP, I could tell you, like at my company, we have a knowledge base agent that it was about 5 months old now, and it is incredible now, and it learns, which is it's crazy, and what it's allowed me to do, and to take so much time that I used to take on things, not anymore. Like it's this. I use this term a lot. It's a game changer. There's no question. And every team that we're talking to is either starting to build it or already has it there. So more and more that you're going to see those. So again, start learning these. Start learning the keywords, and again, learn it, and you're in early. Get in early to these. Let's go back real quick to, I know there was a question I know Anthony wanted us to really talk about, and I think it's important, right? Is when we get down to skills and competencies. So, because it's kind of what we're just talking about. So, what technical skills, software knowledge, or data competencies do y'all consider most important for students and professionals pursuing a career in sports analytics? JP?
I think, yeah. So the biggest thing for me right now, and I'll push back on you a little bit that AI didn't exist 10 years ago. AI has been around since the 80s. It's
It
just been
has,
in a
but yes.
different way. We call it predictive analytics then. And as advancements in statistical analysis has happened, as sensor technology has increased, we've been able to do more and more with it. And so I think, like, there's this buzzword around AI that's happening, but when you actually look beneath the surface of that buzzword, again, there are an unbelievable amount of very different things happening, very different applications of this technology that's just getting looped under AI. And what's actually happening for students that I'm seeing is they're using ChatGPT as a new way to do Google search, and they're saying they're using AI. And that is really, if you came into an interview with me and you're talking about AI or your resume was built using GPT, I'm going to know right away that you don't really have the fundamental knowledge of, first of all, what is AI? What do you mean when you say that? And if you don't understand the true concept of artificial intelligence, of its foundations in statistical predictive analytics, then you're probably not going to be able to understand how to use it very effectively. And so just punching in, a query or a question into GPT is not going to help Taylor or Tyler understand, like, building out a model of like individual buyer profiles and their probability that they're going to renew their season ticket package based on their other purchases throughout the year. And so, like, you really need to start, I think, understanding, like, what does AI mean? What industry do I plan on going into? Is it performance analytics because I'm interested in kinesiology? Is it ticket sales because I'm interested in that? Is it sponsorship? There's all these different applications of it. Agentic AI, like you were mentioning, Doug. And so I do think that you should, in this world now where you don't have to be a computer scientist to actually harness the power of AI, you can be a regular person. The key that's going to differentiate you versus others is how you understand it and how you use it. And so today, like, all those people you're talking to, we have so much data, we don't know what to do with it. Well, now you can leverage these available tools to do with it. But if you don't know what questions to ask and what outcomes you're trying to drive, and you don't have the ability to look at the outputs and be able to question it and say, I don't know if this doesn't look right, or this isn't maybe the data set that I initially was looking for because it's telling me to do something that doesn't really make sense. You still need to get down to fundamentals of like, what are analytics? What is business intelligence? What are the inputs and the outputs that I'm looking for so that you can actually be able to harness some of this stuff? So my first recommendation to students coming out is don't get swept up with the buzzword of AI. Don't just use GPT as a Google search engine to write your emails and your cover letters. Like actually figure out what is the power of this stuff and then get outside of GPT and LLMs. There's all these other ways that you can harness this power. And if you can go into an interview and actually show them, because chances are these people at the companies that are hiring you are going to know that. And they're going to be able to sniff out that you don't know that. And so, again, another way for you to differentiate yourself in that process.
I'm so glad that Anthony recorded this tonight because I want some people to go back and listen to what JP just said right there, right? And think about that over your next 2 years, right? So do what JP says. First of all, do what Taylor said, number one, and number two is do what JP just said, number two, right there, and you're going to get a job. I'm telling you. Tyler, how about you? What do you have to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm 25, so I won't pretend that I got some like decade-long wisdom scroll. I'm learning every day. But from my own experience, yeah, technical skills are huge. The more you know, the more dangerous you become, right? So like I use, blend of Python, SQL, Excel, R. Um, Honestly, don't underestimate Excel. Being fast and clean in Excel is still one of the biggest separators. In our department at least. And it's the quickest way from question to insight. So, but I'd say the real edge is being willing to do whatever the job demands and learning it quick. Like, tools change every couple of years. We have new different ticketing interfaces and whatnot. And, if you understand logic, problem solving, and how to structure your thinking, you could pick up anything, whether it's a new programming language, AI agents, new BI platform, new pricing framework. So I would just say it's not really about what you know today. It's about kind of having a mindset to always adapt, connect dots and apply your skills in a way that actually moves the business forward and not just, we always say stuff, not fluff, right? Don't waste your time with stuff that doesn't matter. So, um, that's what I would say.
That's great. And Taylor, and then followed by Anthony.
Yeah, I agree with both what JP and Tyler had to say. With the development of AI, I don't want us to lose like the core skill sets of querying data utilizing SQL. While yes, and a chat GPT, if I prompt engineer it correctly, which I think we could go down this like whole world about how to prompt engineer and how to learn how to correctly do that. Um, it's still faster for me to just quickly go query a select star from table than it is for me to try and tell the database to go query this information. We might get to a point where SQL is slower, but I don't think we're there yet, or at least in sports we're not there yet. And so I think still understanding SQL is huge, and still understanding Python and how to code, and then utilizing AI or ChatGPT to help debug and solve your problems is a great way to go. But I don't want us to lose the ability to critically think by just directly going to AI to solve our problem. So I'm going to go with a softer skill that I'm always looking for when I'm interviewing or hiring, and it is curiosity and critical thinking. And so if every single time you approach a problem and you go straight to ChatGPT to solve the Python error or any sort of coding error you have, you're losing your ability to critically think through a problem. And we might get to a point in time where AI is going to be able to solve all of our coding problems, but we're not anytime soon, in my opinion, going to get to a point where it can solve all of our problems. So you still have to be able to think critically, be curious. I think a large part of working in analytics is to learn business processes, be curious about current processes, and then challenge and be curious about how we can make them better. My job really is to go into meetings, listen to how we're currently doing things, and then recommend ways we could do things better. And I can't do that unless I'm thinking critically or being curious about like current business processes. So some soft skills I definitely think is curiosity, critical thinking, and I just don't want us to lose that with the development of AI and that going further.
For sure. And Anthony?
Well, Taylor just continues to make great points throughout this discussion, so no surprise there. But literally number one on my list is being curious and using critical thinking. So thank you for that, Taylor, for summing all that up. That was fantastic. I think just no, it's perfect. That was perfect. I think just to add to that too, like to that topic, like going in with and Taylor touched on this a bit too, but just kind of bringing it around is like going in with an open mindset, void of biases. I think is super important to that being curious. I think all of us have our intrinsic biases when we're thinking about anything that comes from our past or our history or our experience. So going into things, I think like Taylor mentioned, going in kind of blank and willing to learn from who she's sitting across the table from, but just in general, going in, void of biases when you're, trying to apply critical thinking is super important. And I think you'd be surprised how much that initial approach can determine your ultimate success. So very, very big skill there. And really like these skills, I think is really anything you can put into practice, right? Like we develop these skills through practice. So even going back to like what JP was talking about earlier, like some of the more analytical or like complex AI tools, I think to some people who don't have a lot of experience with them can even seem a little bit intimidating, right? But it's one of those situations where like you don't know something until you do, and you're not good at something until you are. So the only way to get there is through that consistent practice and being open to it, and through that trial and error, and getting better and better at it as you work with it. So I think that ties into that as well. But a couple of other things too, I would say, is identifying findings in data, which goes along with the critical thinking, right? So the way I kind of think about it when I'm looking at like various different data sets and I'm coming up with recommendations that I'm going to present to C-level folks at a league office or something like that, is almost the mindset of like, if anyone's done any of those puzzles where it has the two images next to each other and it's like, oh, find the one small difference between these two images. It's kind of similar to that, like needle in the haystack, in a sense of like, what's your ability to stay focused and search around and find those differences. And which takes me to the next point of like illustrating those differences. So whether that's through like visualization, and this kind of ties back to some of the software tools of like Tableau and Power BI, which are really big across a lot of organizations right now from a data visualization perspective. But also, are you able to effectively communicate those findings? So like the illustrations will help with that, but ultimately it's like, imagine you're writing a summary of a book or a movie just based on your experience. Like you're speaking to a friend. How well could you write that story with images and words where it creates a cohesive picture in the mind of the person that you're sharing it with? Or in other words, like how good of a storyteller you can be. So ultimately, like it almost doesn't matter like how good the information is that you have or you're able to find if you're not able to communicate it effectively. So even the best sales story, finding, recommendation, just doesn't matter if people can't understand what you found and how they can use it. So whether you're working in sales, marketing, activation, partnership management, or even if you're a C-level exec, I think practicing and becoming an expert in communication and in storytelling is super key.
For sure. I'm going to pause for a second. I want to make sure because I'm looking at time. We've had some good stuff. Are we still good to keep on going?
If folks want to stay on, that's fine. I just want to be mindful of, our panel if you guys need to go, but this is great information. Yeah, I know we get some more questions. We might have to go a sports analytics conference take two. This is great stuff. We can
That's
just
right.
go on and on and on. So if the folks have to leave, I appreciate your time, and I'll stay on here and field more questions. So if you guys are good, if not, I just want to thank all the panel members, Dr. Swanton, Carly, for all your support, and the panel members. But if not, let's keep rolling.
You may see me sip on my old fashions. You never know why I do this. It's just I'm just looking at what time it is, right? No, let's move on to another question here. And I want to talk about analytics in action, right? So if you all can kind of share an example of how data analytics has directly influenced a key decision in your organization, or whether it's on the field or in fan engagement or in the business operations?
Yeah, I'll give you two examples. One from more of the performance analytics side, and then one from a company I was working at, how they were using it, AI and predictive models in the gaming industry. The one on the performance analytics side, so Helios collects data that ultimately tells coaches how hard you're working, and that helps coaches understand the balance between rest and recovery. We don't want to overtrain players. We don't want to undertrain players. Overtrain, you get risk for underperforming and at risk of injury. And if you're undertrained, obviously you can't meet the moment. So we were working with a team. It's a Division I college team. They started out the season, I think, 1-7. I went to one of the games. I was watching them skate, and they looked incredibly slow. They got blown out of the game. It looked like a JV versus varsity team. We went back in, and I did an analysis on our performance analytics. And what we were looking at was, not to bore you with the details, but their game loads needed to be up at like 150, and they were practicing at about a 20. And so usually you want to balance your training loads to make sure that you can perform at a high level. So you want to at least be able to practice at what's demanded of you in a game a couple times a week. And this team was running these practices that the coach thought were hard practices. They really thought they were pushing them. The coach thought that they were preparing them to play, and they were completely stunned and angry at the players for not working hard enough. And when we did the analysis on the data, we actually were able to sit down with the coach and show them that the way that you are preparing them is not putting them in a position to win. They're undertrained and they're underprepared because you're not pushing them hard enough in practice that they can't meet the expectations in the game. And so, based on that data, the coach made a shift, designed different drills, structured their week of practice. And we work with the strength and conditioning coach and the coaching staff to figure out what that sweet spot is. How can you design different drills to get you there to that spot? Because her drills just essentially weren't working. They weren't getting them the output that they wanted because our eye test is fallible and guesswork doesn't really get you the results. And so they integrated data, made changes to their development in their practice plans, and they went out, they won the last game. All of their metrics were through the roof, and it was just a really good success story that we'll continue monitoring. Without data, without analytics, without our models, without analysis, the coach would have just went on thinking the players aren't working hard enough and I got nothing to do with it. And we're just, they would have won 1-50 or whatever the record is. The second one, just real quick, I was working at an advanced artificial intelligence company in Boston that had a division that was working with banking and insurance. And then there was one with sports, which was primarily in the casino gaming space. And they were building predictive models per person that walked into the casino. And they ultimately, through what that person bought, how much they spent, not just in the casino, but at the stores, at the restaurants, they basically were able to build this profile of this person to understand not only exactly what games they were going to play, but how many games they had to lose before they were going to get up and walk away. And what they were able to do was figure out right before that moment happened, and they would offer you a free game. And when you played that free game, now all of a sudden you're hooked back in. And they knew that they could keep you at the tables, keep you at the slot machines for X amount longer. Or if you were on a losing streak, they would send something to your room and they would be able to offer you these additional packages that were going to keep you there. So that's like a sinister in one some way. I don't really agree with that, but it's the same. Probably Taylor and Tyler can talk about how do we build models on our fans to understand what drives them and what they want, and then how can we create a better experience for them so we know they're having the best time and they keep coming back and renewing their season tickets. So
JP, I got to defer to you in how we're recruiting our students and predictability of how we can get more students in. I love that, the casino one. So awesome.
Tyler, how about you?
Yeah, almost everything we do has an analytical undertone, whether it's a major pricing decision or just a small course correction in our day-to-day strategy. One example that really shows how we use data is how we are currently tackling distressed inventory. So expired tickets, or another word is unsold seat. They stick out like a sore thumb in a stadium. So you obviously want to do it. And in ticketing, distress seats are a silent killer. You usually don't recognize them until it's too late to save them. So we built a deeper analysis on historical inventory behavior, which sections expire fastest, how certain opponents can impact demand day of week, which pockets of seats consistently underperform. Once we layer that all together, we actually were able to predict which seats were most likely to become distressed before would even be a problem. So that totally shifted us from reactive to proactive. Instead of switching seats, instead of watching seats die on the vine, we would sometimes intervene early. And one of those solutions that we put into place was partner with an organization that provides tickets to military veterans. So it lets us serve an amazing cause while also preventing revenue from being undercut. So it's one of those like rare win-wins where the business benefits and so does the community. So I think it's a perfect example of analytics, not just producing a number, but leading to a smarter strategy that can better fan outcomes and leave an impact on the community.
It's very nice. So I know we got a few more. So Taylor.
Yeah, to Tyler's point, like we're using data and analytics to back up almost every decision, whether that's me directly providing the data or stakeholders going in and using a dashboard or a report that's already previously built. Like, so there's so many different options or stories I could tell about different concessions offerings that we've changed or how we price our tickets, similar to some of the stuff Tyler's mentioned. Every single promotional item that we do, because we're baseball, we do a lot of promos. There's so much data and analytics that goes into what promo are we doing, a bobblehead or a jersey, and what day and why this game versus this one, or a weekend versus a weekday. Like, so much information goes into how all of these decisions are made. But I think one of the coolest stories I've been a part of, and I know that students enjoy this one, so I'll share this one. My team oversees all ticket sales projections for the like an entire season. So game by game, we're projecting how many ticket sales were or tickets we're going to sell and the revenue that we should generate from those ticket sales as well. So we're actually going through that project right now for next season. So this is something we do well in advance of the actual season starting. And we don't know everything right now, so we're not usually we update the projections as the season approaches and as we go through the season, but we need to at least give our baseball operations team an idea of how much money we're going to generate next season so they know how much money they can then go spend on players and whatever else needs they have or the business has. So this was actually end of 2023 going into the 2024 season. We were working through this project. We had just come off of a World Series run, hadn't had that in 20 plus years. So I really had no historical data on how to project or the boost we were going to see heading into the 2024 season. We had talked with some other teams that were similar markets to us in the boost that they saw, and we used statistical modeling to project this. We had some variables of opponents being in the World Series the year before that we were able to manipulate and use to our advantage because we were the team that was in the World Series, to then run with these projections. Once we finalized projections in December, that went to baseball. And before we even knew the accuracy of these results, because we were projecting a significant lift year over year, our baseball operations team was able to take that and directly, because of the results we presented, they went and signed Lourdes Gurriel to an extension, which was very exciting to see that something that our team did and was responsible for directly related to a player getting an extension to their contract because we were able to prove we were going to make that revenue the next year. Happy to say we were 0.4% off of projection. So 99.6% accurate that year. That is my pride and joy. We have not been that close ever previous or since. I hope to get back to that, but that was a fun year and a cool story to tell.
For sure. And Anthony?
Yeah, that is a super fun story. Yeah, I think, one of the key reasons that we're collecting data in the first place is to like analyze it from a pattern recognition mindset. and come up with those findings, kind of like I was mentioning earlier. I'm going to take just a slightly different spin on this question, more from like a partnership and business development perspective, because that's just kind of the areas that I've been working across the last decade or so. I would say like one of the areas that I've used this to good success in the past is asking clients about their experience working with us, right? So it's almost like partnership feedback, with the objective of identifying those patterns around like what's working well, what might need to be improved, and so on. And just being super candid and vulnerable and open to that feedback from clients, with the hopes to make the relationship better. So we found that it's obviously whenever you're working in any kind of like business development or sales capacity, you're trying to find that sweet spot of like reaching out where you can cultivate the relationship, but not too much where it's abrasive and you're maybe viewed as even annoying, or you're pestering that potential person. So we found that being proactive with our clients, while it didn't have as much of an impact on, say, like retention and like their, likelihood to come back and do business with us, it did statistically lead to more client upsells or like contract expansion. We also found that clients who experienced less consistent, authentic communication tended to feel less satisfied with the partnership. Again, not maybe a huge surprise there, but something that helped to validate that and inform our actions in that case too. And I would say, just like any other human relationship, like the grass is greener where you water it, right? So people generally want to feel seen, heard, understood, and connected with. And when they do, it's generally fruitful for both parties. So that was just something that was revealed, from that analysis we had done around our client management and, kind of our pipeline measurement as well.
Nice. I'm actually going to tell you a story that my friend who works at Disney just told me, by the way. So I want you to think about this, right? So every time you go to Disneyland or Disney World, kind of crowded, right? Would we all agree there? So obviously they've been doing a lot of analysis to figure out what's happening, right? So I'm going to give you guys a little, just next time you're there, when you walk in, just go left. We're going to leave it at that. Just go left first, and you'll thank me later. All right. So all the all the stuff they did, that's what he told me. Just go left, and you'll thank me. So let's leave with one more question on this one. It's a final one, and this is again, it's like I know why I work in sports and why I've worked there. So let's talk about some of the rewards of this. So what do you all find the most rewarding working in the sports industry?
Great
JP?
question. Um, from my experience working on the team side, the most rewarding thing was that I got to be around professional athletes who are the best in the world. And the impact that that had on my own like drive and my motivation and my work ethic and was just incredible. Like there was one story where we and as Taylor knows and Tyler, like these are long hours. When you're working team side and you're traveling, you're working 12, 15, 20-hour days, you're on the road, living out of hotels, and it's a grind. Um, but we were on the backside of a 3 games and 4 nights. It was a like 14 game road trip. It was the last one of the season. We are playing in Detroit on a back to back, and we were going to fly home after that. And we got killed. And everyone was kind of like, at least me, I'll speak for myself. I was just ready to go home. I kind of didn't care that much. I was just like, get me back to my bed. I need to like, I'm burnt out. And I'm walking out of the locker room, and Patrice Bergeron and Zdeno Chara and Brad Marchand are working out in the hallway, so angry that we lost. And they were getting in their extra reps. And like that is the difference between, and then we had a bunch of rookies that were already on the bus ready to go home. And that was so infectious for me. I got so fired up, and I just wanted to like get back to work right away. I started watching the game film already on the bus. And like so that like inspiration, just being around professional athletes like that is the most rewarding thing. And what I found when I left the team side, I was worried about that. Like, are you ever going to be around a Patrice Bergeron in the business world? And I was working at a couple different companies that were doing more than just sports. And I did feel this lack of passion from most of my colleagues. Like they were going home and didn't really care about what we were doing. And it was driving me insane. When I got back into working like specifically for a sports technology, sports based company, I found that passion existed again because people are getting it working in sports because of the passion that we have for it. It's not to make $1 million. It's because we absolutely love what we're doing. And that's been the most rewarding thing. Like I like showing up and going to work and getting after it with people that really care, not just going in and trying to collect a check and showing up and leaving and not caring about what they do. So that's the most rewarding part, I'd say, for me, working in sports.
How about you?
Yeah, being on the business side, I would say for me, the most rewarding part is knowing we're helping create an experience. When we make the right decisions behind the scenes, it could turn into a packed building, a loud crowd, or something like that. Remember after the home opener, a bunch of the players were talking about the energy in the building, and that was a game. It was a tough game to sell out, with it being a Monday night, not as attractive of an opponent. And being able to do it in Philly, that just takes it to another level. This city breathes sports just like Boston does. The Flyers are more than a team here, so um, they show up with real passion, and being part of that environment and just being in it is what I love the most.
Very nice. Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, what JP and Tyler have said has been huge. The passion in the office, in the work that we're doing. And, I think most of us have grown up in this world or a sports fan in general. And I remember the first time I walked into Fenway Park as a Red Sox fan, like, such a cool experience. And I still get chills, like, just thinking about it. And we get to provide that to fans. And even though my like day-to-day work is not getting fans directly into the ballpark, um, I play a part in that, and I have to remind myself that when I'm getting tired or we've had the long days. And I'm fortunate my job is more than 9 to 5. I don't travel with the team. I don't have game day duties, but it still is long hours. That 2023 season when we got to experience the World Series was amazing, and I will continuously be chasing that again for probably the rest of my career. But whenever I'm feeling down or tired, I will just go stand at the gates and watch kids walk into the ballpark and their eyes just like open. And they're so excited to be there, or they see the field for the first time. Like I had a kid one time I witnessed, and I'll never forget this, walk into our suite level. You can't see anything at our suite level entrance. Like you're walking into an old room. It needs to be updated with like just some chairs and tables and maybe a concession stand. And he thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And so those moments are what keep me going, and why I work in this is because we're providing an experience that is a bucket list item for a lot of people. And I have to remember that even though I get to come here every single day, not everybody does. And that keeps me going, and keeps me in this industry.
Very nice. Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like all the feedback everybody's giving is spot on. I would say it's very similar for me, and it might sound a little cliche, but it truly is the people in the industry, when you're finding those right people that resonate with you. So, I find that people who work in sports at some core level, kind of similar to what Taylor was just sharing, like are around the industry because they have some kind of connection to it on a deeper level that's happened, in their past, or some special memory that they have, or something like that. Maybe they played throughout their life. Maybe it's linked to, connection to one of their family members. Maybe they attended an event and it had a profound impact on them in some way, or something of the like. But just like sports is continually, the best version of live entertainment to consume, the industry is also raw and filled with emotion and passionate people who, looking to win and be part of something greater than themselves. And I think one of my favorite parts too is just like a veteran of a sports team. It's awesome when you can also mentor younger people, like a younger player on the team who then goes on to create their own legacy throughout their career, and you can watch on proudly like your, adopted child. So that's a big part of it for me as well.
And I'll leave it with me. I was literally born on a baseball field. My earliest memories was on the field at Busch Stadium, right? When I was a little kid watching family play, right? And I saw the passion of the fans, both like when we would be at a restaurant with family and people would come up to my uncle, right? And you saw that actions, and I saw that early, and I saw that passion, and that's when I knew like I was going to be in sports. I mean, like I love that passion. But as I've grown up, and I noticed something that was all male dominated sports. I'm a girl dad. I'm going to tell you something that's the coolest freaking thing on. I may cuss from this, but it's watching Caitlin Clark bust through freaking barriers right now is so, excuse my language, so fucking cool. It's awesome. And it is, if you haven't, and when you go and see her play and you see what she is doing for a sport, for a generation, she is we talk about, a baseball player in the dot, right? Like he's like the modern day Babe Ruth. She's all of them combined is what she is doing for women's sports right now, and I get to share that with my daughters and take them to the games and watch this. It's one of the coolest things on earth. And you look around, and it's everybody there. It's not just females. It is grandmas, his grandpas, his moms, his dads, his boys, it's girls, it's everybody. I I'm jumping right now just thinking about it. And that's literally it gets me going because there's again is it Deb probably when you started like there was a lot of ceilings, right? And she busted through that ceiling. And it's awesome. And it's sky is the freaking limit. Now they have to work out their new collective bargaining agreement, which they're negotiating right now. We'll see what happens. But honestly, like that is I love watching what women's sports are doing right now. I mean, there's a baseball league coming out for women. It's awesome, right? And obviously there's softball leagues, there's all these leagues. It's awesome to just pay attention to that. And for you all trying to get into sports, that's a way in as well. That wasn't like that 10, 15 years ago. Now these are jobs and are legit jobs that pay. So sorry, I could go on forever for this.
I just want to thank everyone's time again. Doug, JP, Tyler, Anthony, and Taylor. You guys went plus ultra here. We've never gone on this long, but very interesting topics. We need to lean on you folks to learn more about this. Very interesting stuff. And I encourage all the folks that participated, please connect with everyone here on LinkedIn and promote all the good stuff that they're doing. I want to thank, again, Dr. Swanton and Carly for all their hard work. And I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving. And thanks again for dialing in.
Thank you
Outstanding.
guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Have a
you.
good holiday.